I've been doing this for 14 years. You don't last this long in this industry if you don't truly have like a love for the work that you're doing and the peace that you're bringing to people during a horrible time.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Glam Reaper podcast. I'm your host, Jennifer Muldowney, aka the Glam Reaper. And on today's episode, we're going down a little childhood route of mine, or route, as you guys say over here, and we're talking to a Little Miss funeral. So I used to love the Little Miss and the Little Mr. Men. So Lauren, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It's so nice to be here.
Listen, I have followed you for a while. So I've been in this business for about 15 years and I'm dying for you to tell everyone your story. So I've kind of followed you from early on, and then I know like sabbatical you took, and I want to hear all about that. And I know you've kind of, you're not as involved in all of the online stuff as you used to, which is so cool. But I want to hear the journey and how you came to be Little Miss Funeral. How did that name come about?
Oh, okay. So yeah, my name's Lauren, starting at the beginning, I guess. I am a licensed funeral director in the state of New York. I have been working actively at a funeral home for the past 14 years. And when I first started Little Miss Funeral, I think it was 2012. And it kind of started, I was 22 at the time. I'd already been working in a funeral home for 2 years. And it kind of started out of depression for me, I guess. I being very young, working in the funeral home, I'm the kind of person where I talk about my feelings. So if something's bothering me, you know about it. If I'm happy, you know about it. And I think working so much in the death care industry at such a long, early age, it really, like, I just wanted to kind of share what I was doing. And at this, like, other hand, I was kind of sick and tired of friends and family asking me about my job. So I thought, okay, let's just, do two birds with one stone. I will start a blog. I will get some of how I'm feeling off of my chest and kind of down on paper, like an online diary. And then I would have my friends and family read it too. And it kind of started with that. I honestly never thought anybody would read anything that I post, because it started with a written blog, not a YouTube or anything. And I truly never thought that anybody but my friends and family would read it or truly be interested in it. Like, this was kind of at the very beginning of like the internet funeral, death care, dying era. I was kind of one of the first ones, like along with Caleb Wilde. There was Ace Ratcliffe at the time, who was like the mortuary report, and like you had the modern mortician who was coming on the scene. So like there weren't a lot of us that were actively sharing our careers online. And the name Little Miss Funeral kind of started, I am not the biggest of ladies, and growing up, my nickname was always Little Lauren. Like, if there were other Laurens around, it was kind of like, oh, hey, Lauren, what Lauren? Little Lauren, So like Little Miss just flowed. And then I was like, well, funeral, I do funerals. Yep. So Little Miss Funeral was kind of born. Like, I'll never forget, I was actually at my husband's house, but we were just, we're engaged. We were engaged at the time. And I was sitting on his couch and I'm like, yeah, Little Miss Funeral, that's good enough. Didn't even put any thought into the name, like, truly, which I really like the name now that it's kind of been around. So I'm just like, hey, it worked out. Yes. I love it. And the blog really just kind of took off from there. I mean, I just honestly started posting about like my day-to-day, like things that I experienced, emotions that I was dealing with, how I was dealing with those emotions. I would kind of like make jokes here or there, like kind of posted an article one time about 10 things that I learned while working in the funeral home. And Caleb Wilde saw that, Confessions of the Funeral Director. So he asked if he could put that on his blog. And that kind of like jump-started everything. Yeah. Like, he really kind of jump-started everything. And I found that the more I wrote and the more I shared, the better I was able to deal with the emotions that came along with being a funeral director. So I did that for quite a long time, and I liked writing. I personally believe that I am a better writer than I am speaker. I feel like I have all of these thoughts in my head, and when I put them down on paper, I can kind of cohesively put them together, and I can edit them and really see what I want to say and then put it out when I think it's perfect. I feel like when I talk, sometimes my ideas and emotions just come out and I'm like, oh, did that make sense? But then, oh gosh, I think it was 2017. My husband kind of encouraged me to start a YouTube channel. He was like, hey, Lauren, blogs are out, YouTube's in, do that. And I was kind of like, I don't know if I want to. I don't know if I want to sit on a camera and talk. Yeah, I don't know if it's for me. But he really encouraged me to do it. My husband's really active online, like even to this day. Like he has his own like gaming channel. He is just really into social media, and he pushed me to do it, and I did it. And that was pre-kids, and I ended up falling in love with it. Like I would come home from work and I would set up my camera and I would record videos again about things that I was doing or emotions that I was feeling. And then it kind of evolved into people asking me questions and I would answer the questions that they asked. And then the YouTube channel, started to take off. I mean, I don't have like anywhere close to like 1 million subscribers or anything like that. But for like a small town person who am I in the grand scheme of funeral directors? Like it was awesome to have a lot of support. And I didn't really leave, like I still don't think I left YouTube. I have so many like ambitions to come back. It's just that I am on such a different journey in my life right now. I work still at a funeral home about 35 hours a week. Yesterday I worked 13 hours. And now I have 2 kids and we homeschool. So if I'm at the funeral home, I'm basically there all day long. And when I'm home, I'm with my children, homeschooling my kids, taking them to co-op. We live on like 11 acres. I got chickens. So I am just like at a different journey.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of time to do the videos and the editing and the posting. So I keep saying, oh, when they go to bed, then I can record a video. But then I find I'm exhausted at that time.
Yeah.
So one day, hopefully soon, I'm going to post another video up there.
And that was it. That was sort of the start of it, because I do remember, I think you were pregnant with your first child was when it sort of, you were like, I think you kept it a secret. I think I even remember the announcements.
Yeah. I didn't do that on purpose. I feel like comfortable talking about it now, but like I grew up, and my mom had a lot of issues. She lost one baby, had my brother, had a miscarriage, and then had me. So growing up, my mom was always very vocal, very like, I always knew I had a sister in heaven. Like, we always talked about this stuff. So I don't know why I just had this like preconceived notion that because my mom had issues, I would have issues.
Yeah.
So with my firstborn, it was kind of like we ignored that I was pregnant. Like we didn't post like anything, like only people who saw me in person knew. And it wasn't that, I didn't want to share the news, but it was kind of like I was prepared. I know it's horrible to say, but I was just working in death and dying and seeing things that I've seen. I was just like, I'm pregnant. Hopefully I'll have a baby.
Yeah.
It wasn't like I was trying to hide it, it was kind of me dealing with that, being a funeral director and seeing different horrible situations that I see. So that was kind of a secret, but not, I mean, if you watch my videos, I'm just getting bigger and bigger. So it's like, how could you not know when you're honestly watching my video? It's like I am actively changing shape in front of you. And then after she was born, I kind of got back into it a little bit, got into the swing of things. And then same thing, like didn't plan it, but like second pregnancy, then kind of same thing, disappeared a little bit because of that. And then posted a video saying we had a second kid. And then that, I think that's the last video I posted. Yeah. And that was 2 years ago. So
yeah. But I mean, it's like, as you said, you're at a different trajectory in life. It's not like you're not in the business anymore, but it's, you go through different. And I think for women as well, because our bodies go through such changes, and there is, I think when you work in death care, you see so much loss. Like it's interesting that you said that, because it is fascinating. Like baby showers is fascinating to me. Like they're in Ireland now, where I'm from. They weren't a huge thing, because it was very much like you hoped you brought a child.
Yes.
And it was, wasn't an expectation of this is absolutely guaranteed. It was, I know that's kind of 80s Ireland and stuff like that. But like here it's like you'd have baby showers, and I used to be a bit like have a bit of an ick about that because I'm like, oh my God, what if it doesn't happen?
Right.
Does, you know, there is so much. So I understand a lot of people keeping it secret. I know you didn't, but just like what you said there about how you hoped rather than expected to
Yeah.
it's incredible, and I'm delighted and congratulations that you did.
Oh, thank you.
You know, it is something that I think more and more people, women, need to talk about and address is miscarriages and how often people have them. And it should not be just an expectation that, you know, everything's going to be perfect. And obviously the older we're getting, which we're doing more now, you know, and all of this sort of stuff. But I do think in death care, we kind of get to see a different side of life. You know, I certainly, I mean, with the death of my two friends that brought me into the space, it was a smack in the face. It was like, wait, what do you mean we can die when we're in our 20s? This, what?
Right.
This is bonkers. I didn't sign up for this. You know, it was always people were old or they had cancer or something. And, you know, I mean, cancer is just so prevalent, but that was the disease that people sort of died of. When I was in my 20s at that stage. And so for this idea that people at a child age or in their teens or 20s would pass away was such a novel thing. But yet it's so prevalent. It's crazy.
Mm-hmm. I think that's one thing that the death care industry did. It really opened my eyes at a young age, since I was 20 when I started working, that it can happen anywhere and any time. So I'm very aware of mortality. I've always been very aware of mortality.
Do you find that, can I ask, do you find that, I'm not a mom, so I'm asking you, but do you find that influences the way you parent?
Yes, because I quit my full-time job when my firstborn was born to be a stay-at-home mom. And then that lasted for about 6 months until a local funeral director kind of came and said, hey, Lauren, do you want to work for me part-time? And I said, oh, dang it. Because I do love what I do. I feel like I've been doing this for 14 years. You don't last this long in this industry if you don't truly have like a love for the work that you're doing and the peace that you're bringing to people during a horrible time. I just think that it's very difficult to be a devoted funeral director and a present parent at the same time. I think that's why traditionally you see more men in the role, because they traditionally were more of the breadwinners, and it wasn't that women weren't able to or capable of doing it, because women are wonderful in these roles. I just think that tradition, and the man goes out and the woman stays home. And my firstborn, like I said, the minute she was placed into my arms, I was like, oh God, nothing is more important than this little baby right here. And I loved her so much that I quit my job for her. Didn't stay away for long. But I really, I am not willing to put anything above my kids. And that might make me a worse funeral director for it, because in the past, my families that I served came above everything and anything. Weddings, birthdays, I can't tell you how many family affairs I missed in the past. My husband just always knew if something came up, I was going to be gone, and he had peace about that. He knew I was dedicated to my job. But the minute I had kids, I was like, you know what, if they need me, they're coming before a family, because I see death, I see grief, I see that time is fleeting, and I'm not promised tomorrow. My family's not promised tomorrow. And when my time on this earth is complete, I don't want to have any regrets that I didn't spend as much time with my kids as I physically could.
I love that, Lauren. And, you know, you've touched on so many points that I want to come back to. But just, it's interesting what you're saying there, because that is so true. Like, your family should come first. But yet, I mean, I don't have kids, and a lot of the funeral directors I work with don't have kids. And I do feel like families come first. I mean, even for my 40th, God, nearly 2 years ago now, but I flew to Ireland to celebrate my 40th with my friends and family in Ireland, but I flew back 3 days early because I had a big funeral that I had to come back to. And like that, yeah, it just comes first. It's like, no question, your family's first, and you have to be there for these families. And even the first time I was coming home to Ireland post-COVID, I postponed that trip because the family needed me, even though I needed my family. I think when you do have kids of your own, that just completely changes. And because we see how many regrets I think people have at the end of life that we like. I mean, I'm kind of, my fourth book is writing about this, where it's like, I genuinely believe if we realize, if we get hit on the head and realize that life is finite, guys, it is for every one of us, doesn't matter how much money you've got in the bank, it's finite. There's only so much time we have. We will live and love more. And that's it. It's being there, like, for your family. Like, I'll fly home to Ireland in a heartbeat to surprise my parents, just because I know time is limited with them. And it's see that. And I feel like so many people don't see that because they're not working in life and death. It's, yeah, it's just, it's amazing. And I think you're so right. However, that does lead there to be a little bit of an issue in, obviously, recruitment in the space, because we want more women in the space. There are more women coming into the space, but like that, like, as they have kids. And I do think, even though it's tradition, I do think as much as women, and I know most of my friends went back to work, there is still that pull of being at home. Like, what do you think the future holds for the space, like the business? Do you think it's just,
I know, well,
people with no kids?
I mean, honestly, I truly thought that I had conversations with my husband, and I thought I was going to pop out my kid and he was going to be home and I was going to go back to work, because that was just how much I loved my job. Yeah. So I'm not saying that every woman who's having a kid who's a funeral director is going to feel the way that I feel. And there's nothing wrong if your desire to serve other people pulls you away from your kids. I think that everybody has different circumstances, and there's different joys that get brought to us in this life. And I know it's bad to say, but I get joy from being a funeral director. I know people are like, how can you say that? Because it's such a sad time. But I think that being able to do something for somebody who can't do it for themselves is very fulfilling. And I think that there are options for people to be funeral directors and mothers. I have a colleague who I work with right now. She's also a mom. She has 2 kids of her own. And she always says that her dream job that she's kind of putting out there is she would love to just do removals at night, like from, 6 o'clock until, the next morning, go home, get her kids on the bus to go to school, sleep a little bit during the day. And then she's there when they get off the bus from school, and it's like able to have dinner with them and kind of get them situated and then do removals again. There are so many different avenues in the funeral industry that I really think it does open a lot of doors for people to choose, because you don't have to do it all. In the state of New York, I have a dual license, so I can legally embalm, make arrangements, lead funerals, basically A to Z. Or at the funeral home where I work now, I basically am the arranger. So I am the one who is walking the family through the process, setting up everything, making sure it's all organized. But then I have colleagues who are doing the actual preparation work. So we kind of work in a team setting. Yeah. And I just think that if people explore, they would be surprised at how many different avenues they could go down to be in the death and dying field.
Yeah. And it's interesting because I only just had a wonderful woman recently on the podcast, Heather, from Before the Coffin. Do you know Heather?
You know what? I have been offline for so long that I don't know anybody now.
It's also, it's okay, because I also feel like there's so many of us in the space and there's a lot of similar names that even I get a little... Heather and me were just chatting about how she went into transplant removal and transportation of, and I was blown away. I was like, I never even knew that was a part of like what you guys do. So there's so many facets to it, exactly as you said. And while I think, there is this sort of recruitment freeze, or I forget what they have a term for it now, where everyone's panicking that, they're not going to be able to recruit enough. I feel like, exactly as you kind of just said, that it's more that we need as an industry, and I know they hate that word, as a profession, whatever we want to call it, if we would just stand back and look at it from other industry perspectives, right? And not look at it as the way it's always been. Like I keep saying this, just because it's the way it's always been done doesn't mean it's the way it always has to be in the future. And I went to a funeral home out in Long Island, there, I think it was late last summer, late last year. And I met these 2 incredible women who just happened to be there at the same time. But like that, they're job sharing effectively at this funeral home. So they both work part-time so they can be with their kids and they have that time, but that they still have the job that they love. And so it's basically like almost like a relay race. Like they hand them back, like, I've taken the family this far. Now you're going to have Mary, we'll call her, who takes you the rest of the way through. So like one would do 3 days a week, 1 week, and the other does 4, and then they flip the next week. And I just thought that is brilliant, because you also, by doing that, you are allowing people to have the freedom of being with their children or not. It doesn't have to be for moms. It's also applied to dads or whoever else, and just people in general. But it also gives them, there's also less chance of burnout, because you've got enough time, because, and I want to come back to it, because you just hit such a valid point at the start, is mental health in the space, and burnout. I've seen so many funeral directors burn out in this space, and wonderful ones, like yourself, who give so much and care so much, but because they don't get enough downtime or self-care time, because it's a very giving space. I mean, and you hit the nail on the head, which I personally believe as well, is that you said, people look at you odd, and how can you love being a funeral director or get such joy of it? And I absolutely agree. And people will say to me, but Jen, you suit another space. I mean, I'm a memorial planner, not a funeral director per se, but, they're like, oh, you're so happy and cheerful all the time. You suited party planning better. And I'm like, but I get so much love and joy and fulfillment from what I do, because like you said, each family that comes in, I know that without me, this road would have been hard. With me holding their hand, it's a little bit easier, and I can sleep at night knowing I gave that family all that I could in whatever way I could, and made that road just that little bit more comfortable for them, and I think that's it's just, we need to start looking at the space from a different point of view. And I think more part-time moms, part-time dads, we need to fill our cups up in whatever way we can.
Absolutely.
Cause less burnout. Now, how do you, other than your kids, how if you do, fill your cup up in terms of looking after yourself? Because it is tough, especially when, and I'm sure as a mom, if you've got like child deaths and the spousal, it can be tough. It hits home.
It definitely is. It definitely is. And it's so funny, because the older I get and the more family members that I've lost, I'm able to identify with a lot of the families that I'm serving so much more. Like when I was 20 years old, everybody that I served realistically was old. If they were 40, that's old. If they're 50, 60, 70, that's old when you're 20.
Yeah. I remember turning 42 this year. I'm like, oh my God, I remember looking at people in their late 30s and thinking they were ancient.
It's so true. And I'm 34, and it's like, as I get older, I'll get somebody who passed away, and I'll be like, what's the birthday? Oh my gosh, that's like me. And it's so funny, because you can identify. The older you get, the more life you live, the more you see and do. I think it makes you a better funeral director, because you just have so much more under you that you can stand on. And I think that people feel comfortable knowing that they're not in the boat alone. So going through, I've lost now my grandmother, who was like one of the most important people in my life. I've lost aunts, uncles. I mean, I've lost so many people within the last 14 years that I have taken care of. So that helps me identify with families more. And when I do identify, and when those deaths do hit home more so, they're just tough days. I feel things very deeply, and I tried not to for a long time, but it is who I am. So on those days, I have a very supportive husband. Like I have the best husband in the entire world. He knows, if I'm in a mood, I'm just going to leave her alone, and she's just going to be in the mood, and it's fine. And honey, do you need anything? Okay, nope, I'm just going to go over here. We've been together. My husband and I have been together since we were 15. And we're 34 now. So we have been together more in our lives than we've been apart from each other. And I just really like doing things with my family. I said at the beginning, we live out in the country. We have 11 acres. So I like just being outside. I like hanging with my chickens. It's kind of the simple stuff
I would love to.
You're the best. I'm pro chicken. I will talk anybody into getting chickens.
I would love
Um,
chicken. Nothing would work in an apartment in New York City.
you'd be surprised. We could make those work.
A little coop. Don't mind me.
They don't need a lot of space.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like the little things, you know, like I have found that it's like the everyday mundane that kind of gets me through hard times. I also now, because I'm not really writing as much as I used to, and that really was like a journal for me. I talk about it. You know, if I'm having a bad day, I'll be like, okay, honey, sit down because I just got to tell you what I went through. Or I'll be sitting down with a coworker in the other day and be like, I just have to tell you about this family that I dealt with. And I just have to get things off my chest. I'm that kind of a person where I just need to like have that like verbal throw up where I'm just getting everything out, and then I feel better.
I heard, so I heard that from a therapist that is actually a thing that a lot of sort of feminine brain want to do or need to do. And it was kind of talking about sort of male versus the female brain. And it was basically how we need to nearly say to set it up right, be like, I don't need your advice. I don't need you to say anything. I just need to open your bucket so I can pour this into you. And that's it. And then we move on. And so clearly,
yeah. And it works for me. So I do that a lot. And I also do, I mean, I'm not active. I always say I do not physical activity, but I do like an adult ballet class like once every 2 weeks. And I have like a good group of girlfriends who go to that too. So like, that's one thing that I do for me, you know. It's adult ballet. So it's like glorified stretching, really. Like, you know, we're not really doing, I mean, we're moving, but we're not doing much. We're trying, but we're not. And it's kind of fun because it's like an hour and a half, and I'm just with like a really good group of girlfriends that I've known for like quite some time, and we're doing something physical enough for me. Like I'm, you know.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I just think having a good partner is important. I'm somebody who I need support, so I definitely married the right person. And that gets me through it.
And it's to kind of touch on what you were talking about at the start, because like you, and I'm so proud of you if I get to be as a stranger, for taking the time, you know, to step away from all the online stuff when you had your child, and because like Caleb Wild, who's funeral director, you know, he's done similar, and he's gone so far as to pull back, but now is kind of coming back and helping other funeral professionals and coaching them on mental health and stuff. And
I've seen him do that too.
Yeah, it's brilliant to see. And I mean, listen, I'm not a therapist by any shape of the imagination. I do feel like everyone in the funeral space is a teeny bit of a therapist, because you know, it's what you kind of have to do. You absorb you're empathetic, you know, you absorb people's emotions, and, you know, you help them kind of through things. And I've been asked to speak on mental health a couple of times, and I think and I'm always very clear that I have no license to do this, you know, and I'm not a therapist or anything like that. But I think it's more, I like to facilitate conversations, and I feel like there's no right or wrong. Everyone can come to the table with whatever, you know, they feel like is appropriate for them to get through whatever it is, you know, and I've been through my own dips and stuff. What I love about Caleb and you honestly talking with us here, is that you're so open and honest about your struggles and what you need to move forward. And I feel like maybe because it was quite a male dominated space for so long, and more women are coming up in it, but like we're talking about this now, like mental health funeral space is becoming a huge thing. Myself and Barbara Chemist from Cana had a whole podcast chatting about this as well. Funeral peer support are providing that service to funeral directors if they need it. And now Caleb is coaching it. It's very interesting. I feel like it's only going to get more and more. And we must.
Well, I think that like a huge thing. I'm sorry to cut you off.
No, please.
I think so. I think that's like kind of the difference. I don't know. So back when I started everything, there was no like there was no like Instagram famous like influencers, you know, these people, like truly it was like kind of the beginning of everything that is happening now. And every once in a while when I log onto my Instagram and I'm kind of scrolling, I'm like, holy cow, there are so many people out there. And I never did anything to become an influencer or a funeral guru or to like become a face of like an industry or anything. Like I truly look at myself as just like a normal woman who is doing a not so normal job. And I am very confident in who I am. I have always been very confident in who I was, even as a young girl. I was never ashamed of me. I'm always just like this. I am who I am. And you like me or you don't like me, but you're going to know what I think. Because I'm going to tell you what I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
And take it however you will.
Yeah.
So that's, I think, the difference between like today and back then. It's like I identify with Caleb so much. Like when he was like I came from a small town mom and pop funeral home. He obviously had his family funeral home, and with his books and his writing and everything, I met him in person. He's a wonderful man. Everything he's gone through, I'm like, did we work at the same funeral home? Did we go through the same things? Because
wow.
I think that this industry is kind of like glorified. Like, oh, it's the death care industry. It's cool. It's up and coming. There are so many things that you can do, but there's such a dark side to what we do. Yeah. And that's what you take home with you.
Yeah.
And I think that's what people aren't showing on social media. They're showing look at this casket, look at this embalming, look at this, and it's so shiny. And what we do is so cool. And we should share it with everybody. Which is great because it's getting people interested in it. And we want the interest and we want the curtain pulled back because what we do shouldn't be a taboo subject. But I think that it's important to be honest with people and to be like, listen, this is a really great profession, but it's also a really heavy profession.
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons I've never been afraid to share what I feel or what I'm going through, because it's my truth and it's what I am going through. And I'm not ashamed of that. But also I think that people need to be aware of everything that this industry gives.
Yeah, that's such a good point, because there is a little bit of it becoming a bit of an, at the fact that we're even talking about influencers in the space is wild.
It's so weird. 2024.
Like, what is happening? Because it's a tough one, because exactly as you said, you want attention to it. You want people to know life is finite and, think about their plans, maybe, do a bit of pre-planning. Do you want burial, cremation or other? Do you want, what do you want for your end of life? And what does that look like? And then there's all these, new occupations coming up and new technology. Like I don't know how many death doulas, I come across. The celebrant role is obviously becoming huge. And then, technology. I mean, if I get another call, which, listen, I'm open for them, but these kids, here I'm showing my age, these kids coming out of college wanting advice because they're going to disrupt the death care industry with their new app that's going to gamify pre-planning. And I'm like, okay, it's not really going to, because they see these death influencers or whatever they're called, whatever way it is. And look, I'm so here for opening the conversation. I wouldn't be doing this podcast. And so many people have even said to me, like, about why I'm doing podcasts. I do it honestly as a total burden of love, or whatever the word is, because I love talking to people like you. Like, I love having these fascinating conversations. And sometimes it's offloading where we're like, oh, me too. Right. Or, sometimes it's finding out about some amazing product or service that I never knew was around. But exactly as you said, there is such a dark side to the space that we don't show. And, do I think I'm going to start recording those times where I break down crying because I've just done a service that I kind of couldn't hold it. I could hold it together until I was on my own. And am I going to show me sobbing outside of? No, probably not, because I don't know if we need to see that either. Because I do think there's a little bit of acting in that too, but it's addressing all facets of it. Because even like a lot of people, I don't know about you, but for me, a lot of people will say, oh God, a young person's funeral or suicide, it must be so hard. And I'm like, yeah, it is really hard. But sometimes the older people affect me more, because all of a sudden I'm seeing, like, I obviously live in New York. My parents live at home in Ireland. And so I'm sort of like, oh my God, I'm resonating with, that could be my mom. And even though I've obviously, because I'm in the space, I've thought about it, but all of a sudden it hits me just because you're seeing these wonderful people talking about their mom and how great she was. And then you are just, and that's it. That's all that it is. And that can then take you into a spiral where you're just, you start to overthink everything. And from a funeral director point of view, and when it comes down to not necessarily even embalming, but preparation of the body, which obviously I'm not licensed to do, but I know from talking to funeral directors, like there are some states that bodies get into that.
I've seen quite a few, and in those situations, you almost disassociate the fact. Like I have been in some really traumatic passing, some really horrible, like painful deaths that the person must have experienced. And I feel bad saying this, but I almost, in the situations when I was working on the body or doing cosmetics or doing dressing, casting, whatever it may have been, I don't think of it as a person. I think of it as, I need to do this job right now. And this job is me putting this pair of pants here, or putting this makeup here and putting this shoe here. Like, I'm not thinking to myself, this is somebody's mom, this is somebody's dad, because if I put that humanity to it, I won't be able to do it.
Yeah.
And it's not that I'm trying to be heartless, but it's kind of a coping mechanism of something I need to do to be able to do the job, so that I can help a grieving family.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's such an incredible service, honestly, you guys do. And my hat literally is off, guys. I literally have one here I can tip. And it's like during COVID, it broke my heart, even though, and I'm not a funeral director, but it broke my heart. And again, I am lucky insofar as a lot of normal people, because we're not normal, apparently, a lot of normal people follow me and engage with me in conversation and listen to the podcast and stuff. And it broke my heart during COVID when funeral directors and everyone in the funeral space got just so blatantly ignored by all of the, the first responders were doing all of this and getting all these freebies and all of this amazing stuff. And absolutely should they have, yes. They were saving lives. But at the end of the day, I know funeral directors were working 24/7 because bodies, especially in New York, were just piling up.
Yep.
I mean, just craziness. So yeah, listen, my hat is firmly off to you. And yeah.
And I'm in the Western New York area, so I'm on the opposite end of the state as you are. But I had colleagues of mine who were leaving and going to the city during COVID, because there was just such a demand for licenses and funeral directors to help. So that was a really difficult time to work for many reasons.
Absolutely. And it was one of the times where I was kind of upset that I wasn't licensed, that I couldn't help in any way, shape or form. So Lauren, it has been amazing talking to you. I could honestly talk to you all night. I feel like we might have to, since you're one of the few guests that is in the state, I might have to take a visit out to you, and we just might have to hang out a little bit more, because I could talk to you all day and all night. And I just think you've got such a wonderful attitude. You've had such wonderful forethought, being so young in like getting this word out. And I know you didn't think it at the time. And everything you said just resonates with me. Like, I started with a blog and I hated this on-camera business. And then, now I don't mind so much, because when I'm talking to people, I forget about myself. So thank you for doing it, though, because you started what now we're seeing as people having conversations that they maybe never would have. And it's thanks to you and Caleb and the like. So, and I'm so happy that you've got such a lovely balance and such beautiful support at home with your husband and stuff. So thank you for joining us.
Oh, well, thank you so much for having me.